NBA Today starts right now. And we begin our show with some awards news because Luka Doncic and Cade Cunningham, they're now eligible for MVP and All-NBA teams after their extraordinary circumstances challenge of the 65-game rule. It was approved by both the NBA and the Players Association earlier today. And we know what Luka thinks about this because he tweeted a lengthy statement. It says, "I am grateful to both the Players Association for advocating on my behalf and to the NBA for their fair decision. It was also important to me to be present for the birth of my daughter in December, and I appreciate Mark, Jeannie, Rob, JJ, and the entire Lakers organization for fully supporting me and allowing me to travel to be there. This season has been so special to me because of what my teammates and I have been able to accomplish, and I am honored to have the opportunity to be considered for the league's end-of-season awards." All right, our Shams Charania is here with much more on this. How did the league, Shams, come to the decision that they were going to grant these exceptions for both Cade and Luka here?
Look, this is a first for the NBA in terms of granting players the extraordinary circumstances challenge provision in this. And so the league and the players union essentially agreed that both Luka Doncic and Cade Cunningham had circumstances that rose to the level of them being able to now be eligible for All-NBA team and MVPs. In Luka Doncic's case, he missed 2 games in December with the birth of his daughter in Slovenia. In Cade Cunningham's case, he suffered a collapsed lung in mid-March. Luka Doncic played 64 games.
Yeah.
Cade Cunningham was eligible for 63. The argument for Cade Cunningham was this was a non-basketball-related injury. I'm told that's what the Players Union argued with the NBA. But essentially how this goes is the NBPA filed this petition, this challenge on Monday. That gets taken to the NBA. The NBA can either say yay or nay. The NBA was in agreement on both of them. But where the issue lies is when there's not that yay, and that's when it gets taken to an arbitration and an independent hearing. And that's exactly what happened with Anthony Edwards. The petition was filed, that got advanced to a hearing, but in that hearing, he was actually denied. Anthony Edwards argued that he had a staph infection, I'm told, in December. And could that be a non-basketball related injury? Could it be? That's what the argument was, but his did not rise to the level of being granted this exception. And his business manager gave me a statement today. Justin Holland told me in part essentially that while they agree with, and feel happy that the NBPA really advocated for him, as we see right there, Justin Holland tells me, "For me personally, I'm a bit confused at the clemency for Cade, who missed time for something that happened on the court, and not Ant, who missed time for an infection. But ultimately, you already know Ant isn't tripping over it at all. He's more concerned about trying to play as many games as he can. And then in the playoffs, obviously try to win a championship." You
love when tripping is inserted into a statement there, Tim. It is a little bit interesting where the league and the Players Association and this independent arbitration end up drawing the line here. I wonder, does this become a slippery slope?
It absolutely does. It is not the 65-game rule anymore. It's the 65-ish game rule. But look, this is fair for Luka. It is fair for Cade. The intent, these are not load management cases. The intent of the rule is to eliminate load management, or at least minimize load management. But I understand Ant's point of view. It's like, hold on.
What about me?
Like, Cade was hurt diving for a loose ball. It's a rare injury, but it happened on a basketball court. How is it not a basketball-related injury? So I think the league and the PA need to get together and really look at maybe some standard exceptions. And again, I suggest there's a certain minutes limit that if you hit that and you have a significant injury, then there can be an exception that's just kind of standard and doesn't have to be appealed.
Let's get a player's perspective on this. I want to bring in Iman Shumpert into this conversation. Iman, hearing about who was granted this exception, who wasn't, and then also the fallout for the players who maybe would have made an All-NBA team and now maybe on the fringe of that. What do you think of this?
Yeah, well, that's what Tim was just relaying. Now it's an ish rule. It's not a rule anymore. It is now ish, and it sucks because I do understand how Luka was able to get in there still and how Cade was able to get in there still. But now it does leave guys like an Anthony Edwards, and, there's going to be a string of other guys that feel like this is a little bit unfair because their stuff was off the court or their stuff should be respected the same way for a different situation. I know how I am about a rule. I am happy about it that Cade Cunningham and Luka got in there, but I do expect to see a lot more appeals with years to come. So they really do need to nip this in the bud. If it's a minutes thing, get the minutes thing done. If it's a thing that we have to, fine line it and say these are the exceptions. If you can make this, then we need to get it there. But there needs to be a clear-cut rule. Otherwise, we're going to be appealing this at the end of every year.
And Shump's a player. Malika, I don't want to make this about the money. Luka Doncic, Cade Cunningham are not going to be impacted whether they make All-NBA or not in terms of their supermax and their max-level contracts that they have. But Anthony Edwards is eligible for a 4-year, $300 million supermax extension in 2027 offseason.
Sure.
But he needs to make an All-NBA team either this year or next season. This year, obviously, out of the equation. So he has to make that All-NBA team next year now in order to get that 4 years, $300 million.
Right, not to mention the guys like maybe a Denny Avdia or a Jalen Duren, Cade's teammate, who's right in the conversation of should they make an All-NBA team. And now there are more players that are now in that pool. I for one, though, I'm glad the regular season awards, they are sorted because we're fully in the postseason, guys. We got action last night. Steph Curry award.
Doncic and Cade Cunningham are both now eligible for NBA awards. Both played 64 games this season, threshold 65, but both filed successful challenges to the league. Doncic injured his hamstring in game 64, but missed 2 games earlier for the birth of his child. Cunningham suffered a collapsed lung early in a game in mid-March. That was below the minutes threshold to count as a game. And Edwards, who played in 61 games, also filed a challenge, but his was denied. NBA champion and NBA analyst Iman Shumpert with us now. And Shump, 65-game exceptions made for both Luka Doncic, Cade Cunningham for these season honors. What's your reaction?
I like it. The league got a chance to review it, and they accepted what came from the NBPA. I know initially that, my sources told me that the NBPA did not put that into play. That was something that came from the NBA side to say that they wanted the 65-game rule. So though the NBPA agreed to it, they always knew that there was a gray area and wiggle room for it to become better. But they are accepting of the fact that the NBA looked at this as a way to keep teams from resting players and players not uplifting their part of the integrity of the game. And I think that this exception was made because it wasn't anything malicious as far as missing a game. It was more so unfortunate circumstances that happened to both Cade and Luka with the birth of his child. Not unfortunate, but something that, we have to lean on them being humans first.
Yeah, when we're talking about these guys' careers in retrospect, 10 years from now, you look back at All-NBA honors, it is a more fair comparison, you would think, that these seasons do count toward that. Just last night, though, we had a playoff ticket punched and one offseason already started. Tyrese Maxey scored a team-high 31 points to lead the Sixers past the Magic for the 7th seed in the East. Philly now gets a first-round date opposite Boston. Whether Joel Embiid will be on court's another matter. He remains out, recovering from an appendectomy. The Magic host the Hornets tomorrow in the East play-in game for the 8th and final playoff spot. The Warriors' postseason hopes are still alive thanks to, as Hannah mentioned off the top, vintage performance by Steph and Draymond Green. Curry had 27 points in the second half, clutch bucket late, and Draymond locked down Kawhi Leonard as Golden State beat the Clippers. The Warriors now play tomorrow in Phoenix. The winner there moves on to face defending champs OKC in the first round. So, Shump, we've got Warriors, Suns tomorrow for the 8th seed. To you, what above all else decides this game?
Well, the interesting thing about the Suns' first game in the play-in tournament was to see that Jalen Green attempted 30 shots and to see that Devin Booker only got his 17 clip up. When we start talking about Jalen Green, we understand the type of player he is. We understand that he's a capable scorer. But if you go back and you look at his shots, most of his shots came off of ISO actions, him initiating the offense, just everything stagnant, defense set as he came off a dribble handoff there. But when he gets the ball, he needs to come off as a secondary option. And that doesn't mean that he's not capable. That doesn't mean that anything's going wrong because he has the ball. It just means that when you're in the playoffs or in this type of playoff situation, you want to make sure that your best player always gets a look at it